I would like to continue to show you the games from the World Blitz Championship 1970, Herzeg Novi, and we continue from game 2, that was Robert Fischer White against Mikhail Tal. It's important to remember the total domination that Fischer had, because he made 19 points out of 22. The second one was Tal with 14.5, third one Korchnoi 14, Petrosian 13.5, and Bronstein 13. I don't know if you understand how dominant Fischer was in that time. It was at another level. Now, the interesting part of this game is that generally Fischer plays e4 and he says the best by test. Instead, I saw that in the games of this Blitz tournament he played g3, which is interesting, I think. Probably he's trying to test the opening preparation of his opponents, or maybe preparing for the future match, because this is 1970, then 1972 he would have the World Championship, right? So bishop g2, bishop g7, knight f3, c5. Here we can see the fight for the center, okay? Knight f3 fights for these two squares, c5 help the bishop to fight for the center. Boom, beautiful move, right? Beautiful move, because takes away the center to black. And so black continue with the development, and of course they both castle, so that's all. There is also a kind of element of symmetry here, right? There is a kind of element of symmetry. Then obviously Fischer tries to take the center, which is a great move, honestly. But in this case, he's playing really a d4 pawn opening, not a e4, right? Black answer with d6, which is dubious. Probably it made more sense to play knight s6 or b6, but again, unfortunately, that ship is sailed, right? So after d6, there is d takes c5, d takes c5, queen takes d8, rook takes d8, and now there is bishop e3 attacking c5, knight a6, and knight a3. So they are taking out all the pieces, right? So they are good. At this point, white has finished the development, black still has this thing in the middle. Black continue with knight d5, to which you should think for a second and see what you want to play. And then compare it to the game, to the move that Fischer played. Fischer played rook fd1, because if you take on e3, boom, you lose the rook, right? But after bishop g4, the take on e3, it's real. And so what Fischer does, he wants to keep the bishop pair, right? So he plays bishop d2, h6, h3, bishop e6. As you can see, this h6 prevents white from playing knight g5, right? But obviously white has other things, like knight b5, knight dc7, challenging this knight right away. Fischer doesn't exchange, he plays a4, because he wants to have the file open by black. But obviously black is not cooperative and plays bishop b3, to which followed rook dc1, knight takes b5, e takes b5, and of course knight c7 attacking the pawn on b5. At this point, again, you have to choose for Fischer what you would play in white's shoes, right? Fischer played bishop e3, knight takes b5, so notice the difference. Black took a pawn that is more lateral than what white is going to take. Black took a pawn that was a double pawn. Instead, white gets a real pawn, right? So, why do I say a real pawn? Because I remember once that a FIDE master, maybe Charlie's Story, he said, look that the pawns have different value. While the one in the center may be 125, this on the side is 0.75, this 0.5, and this is 0.25. So they don't have the same value. Now, after bishop takes e5, black plays b6, which is a mistake. White plays bishop takes e7, rook e8, and bishop a3. Rook a d8, e3, a5, knight d4, closing the file, and knight takes a3. How do you think white will take back? Because that's kind of important. It takes back with a rook. Rook takes a3, attacking the bishop on b3. The bishop on b3 goes to c4 and bishop f1. This bishop didn't do much during all the game, so he wants to be exchanged to this powerful bishop that has already given white a lot of trouble. But black doesn't want to exchange, so white plays again. This is played again, and at this point Fischer doesn't want to repeat. He plays rook a4, okay? Bishop d3, trying to escape, and now you should stop or pause the video and try to decide what will you play for white. What will you play if you are white? So if you pause the video, b4 was the right move, a great move by Fischer. A takes b4, rook takes b4, and rook d6. As you can see, at this point already you need to know something about rook endgames, because most of the time, as you can see, ends up in a kind of rook endgame. Rook d1 and bishop c2. Beautiful move, bishop c2, because if you take, I take the rook d1, right? So he needs to find a way to fight against that bishop. Rook d2, bishop f5, rook d b2 putting pressure on b6, rook c8 attacking c3 instead of trying to defend b6, rook takes b6, rook takes b6, rook takes b6, and rook takes c3. Now we have a typical situation of 4 against 3. This is generally very advantageous for white, but he needs to know the endgame with rooks, so it's kind of to become proficient at that is not so easy. However, the problem is this: knight takes f5, right? G takes f5, black has this very damaged pawn structure, right? So bishop d5, notice the opposite color bishop, if they exchange the rooks, maybe black has a chance to draw. Rook c7, defending f7, rook b5, rook e7, and beautiful move, bishop c4. Why beautiful? Because he's attacking directly this. Okay? how does black answer to this? With a mistake, which is rook e5. Why it's a mistake? Because once you take the rook away from the 7th rank, who is gonna defend this? Who's gonna defend him? I don't know, right? And so white played rook b7, king h7, and the rook takes f7. Boom. King g6, rook c7, bishop f8, rook c6, check, king g7, bishop d3, attacking f5 now, because these are isolated pawns, so that's what you attack. A good isolated pawn, because it's an easy prey. Bishop e7, bishop c2, rook a5, and now there is king g2, and white wins the game. At this point, I don't know if Tal resign. I think it's possible that one, maybe they didn't finish to record all the moves of the game, and two, this is a blitz game, maybe Tal lost for time, and that's a possibility, right? So this was game 75 from this wonderful book that I hope you will also find very cheap for like $7-10. I don't remember, but I didn't spend more than that. And I was excited because it says he has all the games played by the Russian against Fischer, plus a lot of documents from the Soviet archives. So that's kind of very interesting for me. I hope you enjoyed the game, and I will show you all the other games played at this Herzeg Novi Blitz tournament in 1970. Obviously, for all the other games, I mean the one played by Fischer, unfortunately they are not all here, I think, because my understanding is that he played white and black against the same opponent. Here there are a total of 12 opponents, which means 11. There should be at least 22 games, okay? 22 games. But unfortunately we don't have 22 games, we have 9. So I don't know what happened. Maybe they lost their scores, or maybe they didn't record them because it was difficult, or there were some errors. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I'm sorry that we don't have all of them. Thank you very much for watching.